Yes, gather round, clever viewers. I, Warlock Engineer Adeptus Week, present the glorious creation forged by my genius, the Adeptus Mechanicus, Power Axe, Gorget and Backpack. Witness every triumph of my brilliance, and every failure of the pathetic minion, from printing the parts, assemble building, sanding to shiny metal. Chapter 1, 3D Printing.
The 3D printing is the easiest part because the STL file was already there on the internet. The link to which should be in the description if you're interested.
Chapter 2, Assembling the Pieces.
Once printed, I carefully removed all of the supports and lay them out ready for assembly. The first step was preparing the PVC core. I made the core to be slightly too big for the axe pieces, as being too loose would cause far too many problems. Though it did end up taking a lot longer than I expected to sand and grind down the PVC core so the printed pieces would fit nice and snug. Hand sanding alone would have taken a lifetime, and using the grinder didn't exactly work ideally. I ended up using the table sander and rotating the core against the movement of the sanding belt. This ensured that the unwanted PVC was stripped away and not allowed to melt and pool on the core. The STL had useful registration holes that allowed me to properly align the parts of the axe. I cut up bits of wood and jammed them in so the parts wouldn't move while drying. I used PVC cement to glue the printed parts together and clamp them into position to further secure them while drying.
Fool minion has stuck pieces together twisted. We'll need to cut and put it back together properly this time.
I used cyanoacrylate superglue when sticking the pieces together to the PVC core, which unfortunately meant that on one occasion it hardened before I was ready, and the pieces were stuck out of alignment. I had to cut the core apart and reattach them by inserting another piece of modified PVC pipe into the core to hold both pieces together. Fortunately, the superglue didn't dry too quickly this time round. Because the AdMech Axe is a very large prop, it was my intention to have it split into two pieces. To do this, I created a smaller diameter PVC core that would be stuck in one half of the axe and allow both parts to fit snugly together. I cut out a chunk of the length of the pipe and sealed it again by melting the removed PVC into the gap, creating a plastic weld.
Chapter 3, Filling Gaps, Sanding, Undercoating. Let us enjoy watching Minion's least favorite part. Suffer.
Once all of the pieces had been correctly glued and put together, all of the seams and joints had to be sealed and sanded down. This was the first time I'd ever used car putty, and it dried a lot quicker than I expected it to. It would allow you to get to sanding incredibly quickly, but with a working time of only about 15 minutes. After thoroughly mixing your parts, I had very little time to shape the putty how I wanted it. I guess that's why it's generally used for car bodywork and not crafting projects. I'd personally prefer something with about 30 minutes pot life ideally. Pot life being how long something takes to cure and harden once it's mixed. Once the filler had dried, I was able to sand down the excess using my power sander, my multi-tool, and using hand sanding. Yes, I very much hate hand sanding. It might be the most important part of a crafting project to get the ideal finish, but it's the most tedious and always leaves me covered in dust. Fortunately, the printed parts were detailed enough that most of the axe and backpack didn't need to be heavily sanded. I used a heated piece of metal to melt holes in strategic parts of the props so that they could be later hung up in the spray room ready for undercoating. At this stage, I would advise undercoating or priming in grey because it's not too bright and it's not too dark, so it usefully shows up all the imperfections and areas that still need extra filler or more sanding. Black tends to hide these, while white washes everything out. Also, I used a filler primer, which, as its name suggests, it fills in some of the imperfections in the part that you're priming. So in this case, it would hide any layer lines and mean that I wouldn't have to do so much filling or sanding. So the process was basically fill any gaps, sand down the excess, undercoat, then repeat until insane, or until the piece has the best possible finish.
Chapter 4, Backpack Strapping and Attachments, and Gorget, least pronounceable part of project.
While I was waiting for a coat of primer to dry, I started work on the strapping for the backpack and started the gorget itself. I made a basic template for the back and front, and then once the foam had been cut out, put them on my body form to make sure that I had the right shape. Modify it to fit properly. I then did the edging and detail work, gluing on a 3D printed AdMech symbol stolen from the Axe STL. Next came the details and piping. I made a loop of the tube held together with foam and used the heat gun to slightly soften it, which allowed it to bend into place, and then attached it using contact adhesive held in place using copper wire that was twisted around the back. The attachments of the backpack were two metal plates with a couple of bolts sticking out. I softened the area using a heat gun and then pressed in the metal bar so it would fit snugly and flush with the backpack, and then attached it with super glue and a couple of screws to hold it better in place. I then added more detailing, extra tubes that went and attached round the front and snaked to the back behind the backpack. Once again held on with copper wire twisted around the back and glued using contact adhesive.
Chapter 5, making all metal pieces shiny.
Once I was happy with the finish, I gave the axe and backpack pieces a coat of black spray paint and gave the Gorget multiple coats of Plasti Dip. I believe I used 5 layers of Plasti Dip, about a can and a half. And to be honest, I still wasn't entirely satisfied with the thickness of the coverage of the coat. I then masked the parts of the backpack and axe that I didn't want to be silvered metal. And then gave everything a generous coat of black gloss spray paint. Once dried, I dusted on a layer of graphite powder, then removed the excess and rubbed it down with a microfiber cloth, then sealed it with a layer of gloss lacquer spray paint. Once dry, everything was given another dusting of graphite powder and a rub down with the microfiber cloth, by which time it had developed a very nice, shiny metallic finish. Entertainingly, it also gave my fingers a very nice metallic finish. After 2 coats of graphite powder and lacquer, I then dry brushed all of the metal pieces with a silver acrylic paint to give the highlights a further shine.
Chapter 6, colour painting and finishing, and only a little more of Minion's incompetence.
I then removed the old masking and added new masking in the crevices of the handguard and the shaft of the axe.
My work is almost complete, and Minion leaves Axe to fall and break into so many pieces, missing the tip of the spike. Minion shall fix. So much practice at fixing mistakes.
Yes, unfortunately, near the end, the axe fell off my worktop, and both the point of the end and the pick of the axe broke off, and the point completely disappeared. I used some 2-part putty to replace the lost tip and superglued the parts back where they'd broken, reinforced by the excess putty. I then gave them a coat of black and silver paint to hide any cracks. Next goes the detail work. That's a lot of red paint on the handle and the backpack and axe, at least 2 coats in fact. Next we need white on the skull motif, 2 layers of white, and a turquoise green highlight are for the other highlight details. Next, I airbrushed a dark red around the edges of the diamond shapes of the handle, and then started painting on the brass gold detailing. This once again requiring several thin coats, going over the cog symbol and the edge of the gorget. Removing the masking from the handle, I realised that the red paint had in places stained through the masking. Typical. But that wasn't much of a problem because I was planning on spraying the grooves black anyway. So I go over the brass once again, making sure all of the detail work is finished. Next, we add a spray highlight to all of the brass parts to give it more depth. Then I spray black into the crevices of the shaft of the axe. Once the detail painting is done, I seal everything with a light coating of lacquer paint. I realised that the material I used for the straps wasn't ideal, so I decided to replace it with some black polypropylene webbing and then bolt them with the gorget onto the backpack and remove the excess length of the bolts with my multi-tool and cover the protruding metal bolts with foam. I finally remove the excess PVC tubing from the axe that I've been using to hang it from, and then add a hole so both parts of the axe can be securely bolted together.
Yes, look upon it one last time. The mighty Adeptus Mechanicus axe. Backpack and collar. Yes, collar, much better. Complete finished, shining with the brilliance of Mimi, Warlock Engineer Adeptus. A triumph of genius, a monument to my greatness, achieved despite the endless failures of the pathetic minion. Bask bask in the glory of this finished project, clever viewer. Now, honor Zapsqueak's work. Like, subscribe, and leave a comment praising my brilliance. Do it! Yes! Yeah, that'll do.